Evening all, welcome to another kingscrusher radio show. So Tuesday evening, it's 9:10. I thought we could go over a couple of key games, classic games, best of the best from chessgames.com. So I'm going to say hi on stream. Okay, let's see. So the game I've got to look at first is someone who I have difficulty pronouncing the name of Bogoljubov. We're going to go with that against Alexander Alekhine. I can actually get you a pronunciation from chessgames.com. Hold on a sec.
Ефим Bogoljubov.
Bogoljubov.
Ефим Bogoljubov.
Okay, so that's the one. Yeah, he's got an interesting quotation. With white he wins because he's white, and black he wins because he's who he is. So yeah, let's see this game. So this is a classic game played at Hastings, England, 1922. So classic game here. Hastings is a classic congress which overlaps usually December, January. Yeah, very strong field here in Hastings. It's like they made it a round robin, a double round robin, so they all had to play each other twice. Quite a strong field. It was Rubinstein, George Allen Thomas, Bogoljubov, Tarrasch and Yates, as well as Alekhine. So in this game we have d4 and Alekhine plays a Dutch defence. Actually, let's go from the black side. I just have interest. So Dutch defence, c4. We have knight f6, g3, e6, and we get a cross between a Dutch defence and a Nimzo-Indian, fascinatingly, because a bishop b4 check. I think more usual, it seems to be c6 like this to get a kind of stone wall formation, and black's actually quite keen to maintain the bishop as guardian of the dark squares usually. So it's an interesting hybrid idea. We have bishop d2, but black's not committed now to set up all his pawns, of course, on light squares. He actually plays a piece here, knight c6. Actually, let's add a Gabitza. So knight c6. Sort of, it's almost as if it's tempting d5. d5 is not really. Yeah, white's lost a bit of influence on that d file because of this. So I don't think this is a worry for black. He just plays knight e7, and if takes, I think black's fine here. Fine here. This should be okay, this kind of continuation. So anyway, so knight gf3 was played, and now both sides castle. And then we see d6 quite flexible, as though e5 is going to be playing for e5. That's kind of the positional thing he wants to do. White dissuades that with queen b3, tries to. Probably e5 is not playable here. Let's have a quick check. No, actually it should be okay. It should be okay. But the king sidestepped this diagonal to start off with. So that diagonal. Now we have queen c3. Now e5. Interestingly, it looks as though, yeah, e5 is a very interesting move to play here because of that potentially loose knight. Even though it's guarded by two things, it's still potentially loose in the variations here. So e5 is actually made possible because if taking, we can just take here, and then if takes here, we can just take here, and then after takes, we can take here, and the queen's not getting trapped. It's got a flight square, etc. So e5 is possible and it's played, and so everything seems to work out at the moment for black. After that exchange of the dark square bishops, things are working out, it seems. In fact, okay, e3, we have a5. The knight's even given scope maybe for coming into b4 later. b3, queen e8, now holding e5 firmly. a3. Was there a positional threat here? You know, maybe actually there was, or there is, rather, even in this position, maybe it's possible to play e4. This wasn't chosen. That's interesting as well as the game. This was the move chosen, queen h5. But for those interested in the forcing move e4 here, what would it do here? Well, d5 is possible. And if this, then there's this position with the blockade. Is surely it's okay for black. Should be fine for black. In fact, this bishop can even come to this diagonal. Black's okay there. But anyway, this was the choice. Queen h5. Which again is tactically, there's a tactical trap here set why this pawn can't be taken in this position. Because if takes, that loses. So takes, and knight g4, forking h2 and e5. Thanks very much. So again, e5 is immune here. So we have actually h4, and now there's a slight question about e5. Not me. It's protected. This is a gaping hole though. This move leaves a gaping hole on g4. There might be a better way to play this position. Positioning, it just looks suspect playing h4. That hole on g4 is terrible. Maybe if white wants to try and fight for equality, maybe either d5 or d takes. Let's see. I mean, this position, it should be playable for white. Yeah. It should be playable for white. He didn't play it like this. So he left a gaping hole on g4. Yeah, it looks suspect to do this. Already, you know, white is weakened on the light squares. It's supposed to be black weak on dark squares, but it seems white's doing his best to create sensitivity on all the light squares here, with h4 in particular. So we see the knight just going into g4, holding e5 as well. Knight g5, bishop d7. Okay, f3, the knight goes back. f4, look at this. It's like, you know, it's a lot of pawns on dark squares with corresponding light square weaknesses, and this actually kind of closes up that bishop for a moment. Of course, later the bishop could be useful on the diagonals. It's not ruled out yet. Rook ft1, h6, and now d5. Knight e7 here, and this leaves I don't know what he was thinking. Pawns do not go backwards. This guy Bogoljubov needed to know that advice. Maybe, you know, maybe write it somewhere in his bathroom that pawns do not go backwards, because he's given a kind of hole here now. There's corresponding holes everywhere in his position. These pawns are pretty committed. My chess books are all struggling to get to the floor for some reason in horror of this game. Okay, calm down, chess books. Okay, so knight c6. Yes, there's a hole here and there's a hole here. Yeah, this is rather anti-positional. I don't know what was happening with him at this time. Could be an influence of a book he read. You know, pawns win games or something. Bit overly enthusiastic to create holes all over the place. Okay, so knight b4, and now the queen actually swings back over here, and now actually, yeah, this battery is actually kind of useful now on a4 with d takes. So he's actually targeting this pawn. Now if queen takes, there's a lovely, well, positionally there's a lovely blockade, but even worse for white, there might be a move like, apparently, a move like this is possible. Let's see what's happening here. If takes, we just take here, and then that's horrible, right? It's just horrible for white. There's okay. I mean, yeah, this kind of position. This is you can see this pawn is also poised to. Okay, so yeah, he took actually with the b pawn, just losing a4 instead. Okay, so knight f2, and also if you look here, if these pieces are all hemmed in, if it's just maybe struggling to play g4, but yeah, that's kind of stopped now. Knight d2, and in fact this weakness hasn't been tapped into yet. The only good thing about white in this position is controlling d5. That's put an end to with b5, trying to undermine d5 as well. It's a comprehensive positional murder, this game, so far, basically, on both sides of the board. So let's see, knight d1, and the knight comes into d3. So there's potential now of two connected passed pawns just simply rolling down the queen side. That's quite a nifty move. The observant will think there's a weakness of this last move, that a5 has been left hanging. So that's a good way of parrying b4, which is totally winning otherwise, with a4 next. So rook takes a5. And now, what's the point of this? Well, the position is really crushing if you look at it, because the knights are pretty stupid. These pieces are stupid, especially this bishop. All of these weaknesses on light squares don't help white. So anyway, so b4 is the point. And funny enough, the forcing sequence here, funny enough, happens to favour black in this position. Now, there's two choices here, interestingly. So what did Alekhine have in mind in this position? What do you think? Black's play here. You might have seen this game before. It's a bit of a classic game. What would you play in this position? It has to be said, white really, I don't know if you had enough sleep for this game or something, but you know, okay. Now if you said this, or you know, this taking, it's actually, it's still good for black. It's not totally over yet. That's the only thing you can say about it. It's not totally over, right? But actually the crushing move is to play c2, and these knights are not doing anything about the pawn queening, basically. So rook takes, check. Nothing's doing anything about that pawn queening here. The pawn queens. Knight f1. Now knight e1. Rook h2. I don't know what white's trying to do here. Okay, so queen takes c4. Has now a threat actually of bishop b5. Another little battery, this time on f1. That's actually played. White sacks the exchange there. Ready for that one. g4. Trying to do something. But now check. E takes. And now queen e2. The threat now includes, well, knight d5 maybe, and knight takes e3 might be tempting. We have d5. Now knight takes d5 is actually possible. The more sadistic seemingly is played king g8. Knight d5 is actually possible. You might think this discovered attack. Well, white could actually black could actually just ignore that, because this pawn is also queening in this variation. These knights again are not helping. Well, we can take both knights off there of king f2. Okay, so basically this is also winning. King g8. We have h5, and now basically Alekhine's been sadistic. He just waits for Zugzwang here, some sort of Zugzwang, because if knight g4 we have just simply knight takes g4, and another funny position where the pawn is queening and the king can't even get to f2. So yeah, echoing earlier a sense of humour. Yeah, so e4, knight takes e4, knight takes, queen takes. So you might think, well, does rook and knight stand a chance here? Well, no. If you look at this, white's dropping all his pawns like flies. And again, that sense of humour about the knight not being able to, well, have to give itself up and we'd have a winning passed pawn there, basically. No, actually this is what happens. We just get a winning ending. Yeah. Check. And here white resigns. So I have seen this game before a few times, but my impressions of it at this moment, my conclusions about it, if I was going to be brutal about it, is, you know, did Bogoljubov learn positional play before this tournament? I mean, seriously, I mean, it was black that was supposed to have some dark square weaknesses if he played like the Dutch. He never got into a stone wall. It seems black, far from having the dark square complex, white decided he wants as many pawns on dark squares as possible, as many holes as possible on both sides of the board, losing control of key light squares all over the place, a4 then d5. Yeah, funny enough, the forcing move sequence did favour black, because all of white's pieces were pretty passive. But yeah, I mean, it was impressive. It was impressive positioning. What do you think? It was impressive? I don't know. I think white just played like a total muppet in this game. But anyway, no, it was great. If we look at the combination though, in particular, the forcing move combination was neat. It was neat. It was elegant. Yeah. So Alekhine wasn't put off by his opponent. Yeah. But come on, seriously, what? I mean, come on, seriously, what is all this? But the forcing move combination, let's examine it again. So he plays this really cool move, knight d3. This is actually one of the top engine choices, but there are other moves in this position. I mean, anything will do, I think. I think anything will do. Bishop e6. White's kind of positionally dead anyway. You know, if we get control of d5 here, White's positionally going to pieces anyway, right? But it was sweet the way he played it. It was sweet. Yeah, this pawn is actually really, it's a really aesthetic combination. Yeah. Okay, so I hope you got something from that game. Don't make Swiss cheese out of your chess positions, otherwise you'll be humiliated with passed pawns coming at you combinationally. So let's have a look at another game, fantastic classic game. Okay. So this is Capablanca against Tartakova in 1924. And there are certain notes by Alekhine and Reti which I think have passed their copyright, but I'm not going to... I might mention some of the quotes. Okay, so Capablanca playing white. We have d4, and Reti... Sorry, not Reti. Tartakova plays e6, an invitation for French, but we have knight f3, f5, Dutch, another Dutch defense. So bishop g5, bishop e7, knight c3. Now e3, so a modest move here. Good dark square grip from white. Looks pretty positional. And in fact, now we have knight e4, and white doesn't mind getting double pawns here. Yeah, white's okay with the double pawns here. He hasn't got a bishop hemmed in or anything. It's not the end of the world to have double pawns here. Okay, we have bishop takes f3. Looks a bit strange to voluntarily give up the light square bishop. But okay, rook fb1, and then we have queen h3. and maybe white wants to play e4 at some point here. Rook f6. The problem is e4 can be answered with, I believe, well, e4 can be answered actually with e5 to hem in this bishop. Yes. And if takes, then the full wrath of black's position, well, it doesn't look too good. This doesn't look good. So this e5 is kind of liberating for black. It stopped with f4. Now in this case you might wonder, are my criticisms of the pawns on dark squares relevant for this one? Isn't e4 weak? The thing is, you'll notice in this position white has a light square bishop and black does not have a light square bishop. So the e4 is not so weak here, as in not so exploitable, as in white's got that covered here. So knight a5. Instead, black's attention is a bit on this double pawns here. So queen f3, setting up a blockade, classic blockade. So d6, rook e1, queen d7. Like in the other game, actually a4 is a little bit of a target as well. But e4 is played here, takes, and now it's black under fire. He is provoked into a weakness, g6, and we have g3. Note, all this time this rook's holding a4 here. King f8. What was white going to do there? Maybe, okay, let's carry on. King f8, king g2, which portrays the idea that maybe something like this is on the cards. And in fact, h4 is played, trying to just bash this pawn chain with something like this. h5 maybe first rather than rook h1. d5 is played here, and funny enough, well, this assists white to undouble the pawns, and white does actually go into this endgame. Actually, he hasn't yet finished with black's pawn chain here. He does play h5 in this position, attacking this little pawn chain. Now, if taking, this is just horrible actually, rook h1. It's really dicing the pawns. That's unpleasant. So basically black doesn't want to do that. He does this, takes, but that's dual purpose. It wasn't just defending, it might be attacking white's weakness, you might think. But we have rook h1. Now if black goes for this, I don't think there's any point to this. Actually, bishop b5 in this position tactically refutes that in any case. So we have we have king f8, and the rook comes to the 7th rank. So the wonderful thing about this game, you'll note with this move, it's possible now to attack this pawn, and he does that here. Now we have a very interesting move, g4. If rook takes, I think we can just take on g6 here, and we've got the two connected passed pawns. So we see knight c4 actually holding on for g6 a bit longer, and maybe trying to get to this pawn like this. Okay, we have g5, check here. Now black doesn't go for knight d1, funny enough. He doesn't go for this, which is tricky. It is tricky. Knight d1 is probably one of the better tries. Probably we have a line like this where it's going to be okay for white. Here, slight advantage for white. Less than half pawn technically actually, but it should be the possibilities to win from this position. Anyway, it wasn't tested. That wasn't tested. Instead, we have, after this move, remember we still can't play this because the knight's hanging there. So we have knight f5. Now here is the really interesting, elegant point about this whole game. And for me, I must admit, when I saw this game first in Irving Chernev's most instructive games of chess ever played, yeah, this did have some sort of profound effect on me. How in endgames there are a couple of major rules about rook and pawn endings, and rook and pawn endings are like the most frequent type of endings you'll ever get, right, in chess. So having a knowledge of the two golden rules emphatically should really help, and it's this game which emphatically underlined something about rook and pawn endings, which was that kings are meant to be, they can be much more aggressive in rook and pawn endings to assist, past pawns. So this move really was an emphatic demonstration of that here. In fact, there's not too many choices for white in this position. Okay. Sorry, the other golden rule, as well as aggressive kings, Tarash said a rule, and I was just reading it earlier today, that rooks belong behind passed pawns. Now, if you're the aggressor with the passed pawn, it's to queen it, and if you're the defender, it's to stop it queening. But he does qualify his own rule, apparently. He says, except when it's not correct to do so. So he says this thing, rooks behind passed pawns, except where he's not correct to do so. I kid you not, on Wiki there's the qualifier like that of that Tarash rule. If you want, I can prove it to you. I can find the Wiki link and put it on the chat. I read it earlier today, believe it or not. But anyway, coming back to the first rule, how do we get white's king to be aggressive in this position? Do you see the move and the idea? So white's play, you might not have seen this game before. I'll give you the first move, right? Bishop takes f5, but it's here. Okay, it's here, this position. White's play, what would you play in this position? So you've got these two major golden rules about rook and pawn endings. So the first golden rule is, kings are meant to be like really aggressive, yeah, in rook and pawn endings. And I wonder if I can find you the wiki on Tarash for the link for the other one. Rooks behind pawns. It's actually called the Tarash rule. Yes, there's actually a wiki page for the Tarash rule, right? So I'm giving you both major tips for these rook and pawn endings. If you read the Tarash rule link on Wiki, it says rooks should be placed behind passed pawns, either yours or your opponent's. The idea behind the guideline is if player's rook's behind his passed pawn, the rook protects as it advances, and if it's behind the opponent's passed pawn, the pawn cannot advance and it's protected unless it's protected along its way. And he qualifies that later. This is the fun. I found it amusing. Always put the rook behind the pawn, right? Except when it is incorrect to do so. I found that amusing. I don't know about you guys. I'm easily tickled, yeah, by these rules. I mean, if you can make rules like that, except you just add to the, so you just say except when it is incorrect to do so. Okay, but anyway, the golden rule here is aggressive king, and we can achieve that with king g3. It's when I saw this game, I thought, wow, king g3, because you know what he's done. What he's done is subtly weaken h5. You know when he took that, he's actually subtly weakened h5. h5 is now an entry point. It's decisive. Alekhine hails it as decisive! Exclamation mark! Alekhine comments on this game. White sacrifices material in order to obtain the classical position with a king on f6. Pawn on g6. A rook on h7. That's the rook on the 7th. Whereupon black's pawns tumble like ripe apples. Rook takes c3 check. It is extremely instructive to see how Capablanca is no longer in the least concerned about material equality, but only thinks about supporting his passed pawn. That's what Richard Reti says now. He's only thinking about supporting his passed pawn, yeah? King h4, rook f3. Drops another one. But he's getting to that f6 square. Look at that, getting to the f6 square. This is one of the most emphatic rooks on the 7th games you'll ever see in your life from Capablanca, yeah? It is a frequently available finesse in such positions not to capture hostile pawns, but to pass them over in order to protect the rear end. You want to protect your rear end? No, really, you do. Sorry, I don't know why I've said it like that. Sorry, no. You protect it in the rear against the checks by the rook. Okay, so anyway, king g8. Sorry. Check. Oh dear. And a rook takes c7. Okay, so we've got the ideal position. We've got a really aggressive king. We're almost threatening mate here now. We're threatening mate. This pawn is helping us, you know, on the rear. It's no checks. So we're threatening a mate now. So the rook is pacified. And now we can take this pawn. Wonderful position. Really aggressive. Look at the aggressive kings. Dear, I think there's a major threat of king f6 now. So again, the simplest. Okay, so rook e4, king f6, again threatening the mate in 2. But now we have this check, king e5, rook g4. But now white is prepared to transition into a winning king and pawn ending with g7 check. Black dare not take this pawn on g7. Yeah, because takes, we just have a winning king and pawn ending transition, yeah? That's totally hopeless. So we have now king g8. And white's getting all his material back. He's getting all the pawns. The king has caused devastation. And this pawn is being herded forward. It's being herded forward now. Rook's now here. King c6. Yep, the pawn's coming in. And here. That's it. Capablanca wins here. And it said Capablanca's management of the endgame gives the impression of being so natural that one easily forgets the difficulty of such precise play. The difficulty is chiefly psychological. In chess, as in life, one is accustomed to place value on the material factors. Yeah, that it is not easy to conceive the idea of indulging in pawn sacrifices when there is so little material, when there is so little available material, Richard Reti says. And this is really interesting because actually I wasn't going to do this. I was going to maybe just cover these two games. I had a blitz game recently where the Tarrasch rule was tested and I was distracted by some tactical sequence instead. And, you know, the rook and pawn endings are so vital to get right. And it is easy to be, you know, distracted by material or tactical concerns. But, you know, these are such two golden rules, I think, you know, about the aggressive king and the rooks. If you want, I'll try and dig out this key moment of a blitz game, but it's a bit of a spoiler for the channel. But since we're on the subject of rook and pawn endings, shall I find you a position I had where I know it was a blitz game, but I could just tell you it anyway. I should have put my rook behind a pawn, you know, a passed pawn, right? And I didn't, so I went in for some tactical thing, some check, and the opponent just put the rook behind the pawn. And as Tarrasch says, it just, you know, it's easy and deadly. You know, you just put the rook behind the pawn and it queens. It did in my, anyway. This is a game scheduled on the channel. Rook and pawn endings, you've got to get them right. But this is a classic game And I think it was Chernev which, you know, he added so much enthusiasm when going over this game about rook on the 7th. But it's also been, it's annotated already on the kingscrusher channel. If you want to check my dedicated video on it, I'll give you the link. So kingscrusher, like rook on the 7th, is this game. This is like a model game held up for the power of a rook on the 7th rank. You might want to check that out as well. I'll give you the link. Okay. So classic game here. 2 classic games. But yeah, these rook and pawn endings, I think we've got to bear that in mind. The 2 emphatic goals. Sometimes we've got to do pawn sacrifices. We've got to lose our materialism. And by the same token, we shouldn't be attracted by tactical or material concerns, because we want to really bring out these 2 elements of rook and pawn endings, that our rooks are behind our pawns, they're active and aggressive, and our king is active and aggressive. So that's the real driver, 2 main drivers of rook and pawn endings. Yeah. So I hope you got something from that. Did you? I don't know. 1, you got something from it? 10 didn't? Or okay, otherwise, anyway, so I'll see you next week. Hope you enjoyed these 2. And maybe you got something from these 2 games. Thanks very much. Cheers then.